guys, I hope you're having a good summer so far. So I just wanted to post a little exercise that you can do for homework. This is a really simple technique to creating watercolor portraiture. Basically, I'm going to mainly only be using primary cyan and burnt sienna and cadmium orange. So mixing very few of these colors. And I'm going to, instead of trying to copy a reference, create the illusion of the complexities of skin tone by working wet on wet and contrasting the fluidity within the wet on wet areas with sharply defined brush strokes on dry paper in the more defined areas. Now, the secret to doing these color transitions easily is in the paper. So this is Arch's 840 GSM paper, which is ridiculously expensive. However, it is also extremely easy to use. You can get away with lots and lots of layering on it. You can pick up your paint. It is very, very forgiving. So what I do is for studies, just cut this up, and I actually use both sides because it's pretty thick, so I don't even need to tape it down. Okay, so we'll start with the drawing. I'm drawing a line for the eyebrows, the eyes, the bottom of the nose, and the bottom of the lips. I'm gonna start with the nose, so I'm starting with a circle. I'm gonna identify the highlight and then carve out the nostrils. And now, moving up the bridge of the nose, I'm going to identify where the eyes are by looking up from the inner corner of the nostrils. So the inner corner of the eyes will align with the corner of the nostrils. So I'm just going to mark out that eye. And moving in with the other one. So I'm making sure that like the tops of the eyelids and all the details are aligned with one another. That's what I'm doing when I'm moving my pencil back and forth. Moving up to the eyebrows, I'm going to mark these out, remembering that the eyebrows are going to be informative in regards to the planes of the face. So where they kind of curve, you're moving into a different plane on the face. And just refining the nose a little bit, remembering that the nostrils are the darkest part is almost always going to be smaller than you think it ought to be. I'm just going to straighten up the nose a little bit here. And moving down the philtrum, I'm going to get the upper lip down, so the sides of the lips are going to be roughly aligned with where the pupils are. And she's slightly smiling, so I've got a little bit of a smile there. And moving up from the bottom lip. So now I'm going to start with the chin and the sides of the face. So moving up the jawline, making sure the jaws are aligned, the sides of the face, the top of the head, and the neck. And the ears, the top of the ears are going to roughly align with the eyebrows and the bottom of the ears roughly with the bottom of the nose. And I'm just going to put some marks in, roughly showing where the hair is going to be. So now I'm going to wet the paper down before moving in with the cyan. And I'm going to do an underpainting all in cyan. I'm moving from part to part of the figure as I go along, so not necessarily wetting the whole thing down at once, just so I can focus on one area, see how the paint is reacting with the paper, And also by working section by section, you can control where the cutoff lines of these bleeds are. But I'm just working really loosely, and I'm going to get this first layer of cyan down across the painting, just adding in shadow where the light is receding from us, and being really generous in leaving wider open spaces than perhaps I think there ought to be, because the paint is going to bleed into these open spaces. So feel free to experiment as you move down the painting, just keeping kind of the central darker areas dark. But other than that, experiment with the background and working with the wet on wet technique. Okay, so now I'm re-wetting the paper before coming in with some burnt sienna. So depending on what paper you're using, you may find this more or less difficult. And when I come in with the burnt sienna, so just plain color, I'm just going to very lightly dot it in and then wait for those dots to expand. And while I move closer towards the corners of the head, like the top of the head, I'm going to come in with some cadmium orange. So I'll just speed through this section, but take your time with this. I'm just dropping in that burnt sienna and cadmium orange, and I'm using more concentrated amounts, sort of near the top of the head. I'm going to use a more concentrated amount where the plane shifts on the side of the head. And I'm working very slowly, just letting the paint do its own thing. So not overworking any one area. I want to wait and see what it does. So you want to kind of keep your movement going throughout the entire painting. So not just over focus on one area. And when I get to the nose, I'm going to add a little bit of yellow ochre just closest to the highlight. You want to be really careful to protect your highlights, so good highlights can go a long way in making a believable painting. And so finally, when I want to make certain areas cooler and darker, I'm just mixing some cyan with my burnt sienna. So I'm creating a darker brown by mixing blue into it. And now I'll slow down here to show another technique you can use to get your values set. I'm picking up color by taking a clean, wet brush and applying pressure down on the page. So I've got a paper towel in my hand that I'm just wiping the brush on, and I'm picking out the lighter areas on the cheeks and possibly the forehead. Okay, so now I'm going to move back into the eyes to bring that value a bit down. And I'm going to come in with essentially, again, just burnt sienna and cyan with a fairly heavy application, but then I'm going to come along with my brush and pick up the paint on the underside of it. And that essentially is showing the reflection of the upper eyelid on the whites of the eye. So I'm starting with the whites of the eye, and again, be really, really careful to maintain your highlights throughout this. That's the biggest challenge. And then with the lips, I'm slightly dabbing in some, I think that's Potter's Pink. You could use alizarin crimson, any kind of cool red value that's slightly different from the values within the painting. And because of this paper I'm using, I know that I've got pretty good control over where this paint is bleeding on the edges of the lips, but you might find if you're using any different type of paper or hot pressed paper that at this point that red goes everywhere. So you might want to be a little bit more cautious about where it's going. I know that because I'm using this great paper, I can edit those little areas in the corners of the lips, and I want this to have kind of a dreamy, fluid appearance without too many harsh lines, so I'm not too concerned there. Okay, so when I'm happy with sort of my looser painting, I'm going to come in with more defined values. So here I've just mixed cadmium orange with that cyan blue. You could also just mix the burnt sienna with it. And I'm varying the color slightly depending on what area I'm looking at, but basically I've waited for this paper to fully dry before putting down these marks. And the contrast between these marks and the fluidity of the paints within the painting kind of automatically creates this illusion of skin. Okay, so piece by piece, I'm putting in the dark values very specifically using a fine brush. And I've sped this up just because it takes a while, but really put concentration into the placement of your wet on dry marks here. And we'll be going over the structure of the face in a few weeks. I'm picking around some of the areas with more fluidity just to create a contrast in textures. So you want your audience to know you're working with watercolor. So you want to have a reason for the medium that you're using, and allowing the viewer in on that by allowing some areas to remain more fluid and more characteristic of the medium can go to creating a more dynamic portrait as a whole. Okay, so if you've been painting along with this, I'd recommend stopping painting right now. I'm gonna speed through this part, but I thought I'd keep it in just because it references something which is interesting about watercolor portraiture. So my instinct when I get kind of frustrated or in that kind of bored area with the painting is to move into the hair and try and really quickly get that down, which is not a good idea, and I'm always reminded of that. The thing is, we need to remember that skin color is reflecting what's around it. So hair will influence the tone on the skin, surroundings will influence the tone on the skin, the color on the skin. So things like hair have to be put in with purpose and intention. And I came in here, as I often do, trying to put in some hair, which did not work because it had no relevance to the face. So better to leave the mind to imagine empty spaces than put in context that does not have relevance within the actual face. So if I were to actually think about this, I would have to kind of reverse imagine what are my colors in the skin, what's the color outside of the skin. I did not do this here, so I end up just taking off all of the hair. Okay, so I'm finally going to come back in with some more details of the eye, so putting the irises in. And at the very, very end, I'm going to use some black to put in the pupils. So you want to make sure that your painting is absolutely bone dry before you put the pupils in or details within the eyes, because obviously our eyes are going to be drawn directly there. Okay, well, I hope you guys have fun with this, and I'd love to see your work. Either email it to me or post it at soho_live_drawing. in 2 weeks on, I think it is the 16th, I'll be running a class on details, so finer details of the eyes, the nose, the lips. So if you're interested in that, do be sure to check it out. Otherwise, yeah, thank you for joining. Enjoy.